120M lottery win. How a Father's Day gift exposed my daughter's secret betrayal. The air crackled with excitement that Sunday morning. The sun peeked through the curtains, bathing the living room in a golden glow. It was Father's Day, and 37-year-old Richard Miller stood grinning at the lottery ticket. He clenched in his hands with more pride than a new father holding his baby. Today was going to be extraordinary. He could feel it in his bones. Little did he know, this ticket was not just a chance for a better life. It would unravel a web of dark secrets hidden beneath the surface of his family's seemingly perfect life. There were strange details echoing in his mind as he recalled last night. He had taken a silly chance, scratched off a ticket on a whim, laughing at his own wishful thinking. But Richard hadn't just won. He had hit the jackpot, a staggering 120 million. The numbers danced in his head like a stalker's shadow, haunting and irresistible. As Richard reveled in his triumph, something deep down felt off. There was a tension in the air, a faint whisper of unease. He brushed it aside. Couldn't he let anything spoil the happiness now, right? But as his daughter Emily bounced in, her face bright as day, he noticed how her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. It sent a shiver down his spine, curling like ice around his heart. Suddenly the ecstatic environment turned claustrophobic. He squinted at Emily, whose laughter felt more strained than jubilant, like a poorly tuned violin. And then came the casual way she avoided his gaze, as if there were a chasm of unspoken words between them, echoing more loudly than the whoops of joy coming from his wife. Had his little girl been living a lie? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Richard's eyes darted back to the ticket, and the thrill that once filled him began to wane. Questions swirled in his head like a tempest. Was this fortune turning his life upside down? What secrets were lurking in his family? With a lump tightening in his throat, he sensed a betrayal lurking in the shadows, waiting to pounce as soon as he embraced this newfound wealth. As the laughter around him faded to an echo, Richard's heart raced. Could fortune be a curse instead? What was his daughter hiding? Richard's chest tightened as he stood in the center of the living room, still clutching the winning ticket like a talisman. The joyous chatter around him felt like a distant hum, fading into the cacophony of his racing thoughts. Did Emily think his luck could somehow unearth the truth? He had never been so unsettled in his life. Dad, you okay? Emily's voice broke through his spiraling thoughts, her brow furrowed with concern. She was close, too close. He could feel the heat radiating off her body, and yet an icy chill wrapped around his heart. I'm fine, he managed, though he could hear the tremor in his own voice. He forced a smile, but it felt like wearing a mask. Emily's eyes darted away, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. It was a telltale sign, one Richard had recognized since she was a little girl. Something was off. Are you sure? You just seem a little different, she pressed, concern deepening the lines on her young face. Yet the way she spoke felt rehearsed, a scripted act. And that when it hit him, had she known? Sensing the walls closing in, Richard turned to the window, seeking comfort in the outside world. A neighbor walked by unnoticed, while Richard's focus narrowed on the reflection of his own face, concerned, worn and confused. Just a lot on my mind, he finally admitted, glancing back at Emily and catching a glimpse of her determination. The pretense of joy she wore for him was slipping. The atmosphere crackled with energy and secrets, intertwining with the sunlight that kissed the living room floor. He felt that weight pressing down on him, intensifying every second. As if summoned by his thoughts, his wife Lisa bounded in, excitement radiating from her as she threw open her arms to embrace Richard. Did you see the news? Everyone is talking about those crazy lottery winners. Richard stiffened, and the tightening in his chest returned. Yeah, can you believe it? He asked, struggling to maintain normalcy. The laughter echoed through the house, but Richard felt like he was drowning in a sea of uncertainty. He forced himself to refill the atmosphere with genuine enthusiasm, but the weight of Emily's silence loomed large. After a few moments of feigned exhilaration, Richard decided he needed a break. "I'll be right back," he spoke, his voice quaking. He excused himself, retreating to the solitude of the back porch. The fresh air hit him like a slap. He took a moment to breathe, focusing on the rhythm of his pulse below his skin. That's when he noticed a figure standing at the end of the yard. It was Emily, staring at something hidden in her hands, her expression unreadable. The knot in Richard's stomach tightened as he approached her. "Emily, what are you doing?" Startled, she dropped whatever she was holding, and it rolled into the grass, revealing a small, crumpled envelope. His heart sank. What had she been hiding? "Nothing, Dad. It's just," she stammered, eyes wide, begging for understanding. Richard stepped closer, his own breath catching. "Open it, Emily." She hesitated, dread clouding her features. Finally she reached down, trembling fingers grasping the envelope, and in an instant Richard felt time freeze. What was inside could change everything. Just as she began to unravel the truth, the world seemed to halt. Richard's heart raced, seconds stretching into eternity. What had he walked in on? And what would come tumbling out of Emily's hidden past? He took a step forward, ready to shatter the silence. Would she dare reveal it? Or would the secret stay buried, festering in the layers of laughter and love? As the tension thickened, Richard braced himself for the revelation that might consume them all. Richard held his breath, time elongating as he stared at Emily's trembling hands. The envelope trembled even more as she clenched it tightly, her knuckles white against the worn paper. The air between them was thick, every unspoken word, every hidden truth was poised to erupt. "What's in there?" His voice was steady, but internally his stomach churned. He was no longer watching his daughter. He was watching the unraveling of everything he thought was safe. Emily's gaze dropped to the envelope. It's nothing important," she whispered, her voice almost lost in the rustle of the leaves. "Emily," he pleaded, stepping closer, desperate. "Whatever this is, it matters. To both of us." She winced at his words, the fear flashing in her eyes like a bolt of lightning. Richard had seen that look before, but never directed at him. The moment stretched, filled with silence, and the world outside faded. Finally she tore the flap open. With a quick flick she pulled out a single piece of paper. Richard's heart raced, thundering in his ears as he leaned in, aching for understanding. The sunlight caught a tiny glint of something silver tucked inside the envelope, a key. "What the heck is this?" he breathed, chest tightening as Emily's face twisted in turmoil. "I didn't want you to find out like this." Her voice cracked, slicing through him like a blade. "It's a letter from Mr. Hawthorne." Richard recoiled slightly. "Hawthorne? That name sounds familiar." "Yeah, he's the building manager at the old house we used to live in." She swallowed hard, the weight of her words seemingly pulling her down. "He sent it to me after everything went down with the move." Richard's eyes narrowed. Memories began to flood back the house, the things lost, the change of the familiar into unfamiliar. "What did he say?" Emily turned the letter in her hand, her fingers trembling as she prepared to read it aloud. "Dear Emily, I have been instructed to give you this key. It opens a safety deposit box tied to your family's past." She paused, glancing at Richard with eyes wide, shadows of doubt and fear trailing behind her, everything she anticipated from the man she called Dad. "What does that mean?" he asked, brave but heart-racing. "Dad, the box contains memories. Things Mom didn't want you to know." Richard felt a chill race down his spine. "What kind of memories?" "Emily, you're scaring me." Her voice dropped to a whisper, glancing around them as if shadows would listen. "There are papers in there that link to a loan she took out years ago. The amount, Dad, it's huge. It could explain the trouble we faced when we moved." The world started spinning. His mind raced as he tried to piece it together. "What do you mean, trouble? Why would she hide something like that?" "Because it was connected to something else," Emily said, dropping her gaze. "Something she didn't want you to find out. The gambling, the debts." Richard's stomach dropped, but before he could speak, Emily pressed the envelope into his hands. "You have to know the truth. Please read it." With shaky hands he unfolded the letter. The words blurred together. They screamed back at him, filled with truths he wasn't prepared to confront. Suddenly, A loud crash echoed from inside the house, startling them both. Richard's heart jolted, and he shoved the letter into his pocket. What was that? They exchanged frantic looks, and with instincts kicking in, they raced back toward the door, worry fueling their every step as they crossed the threshold. The laughter from the party abruptly cut off, leaving behind a heavy silence. Richard's pulse quickened as he and Emily stepped inside to confront whatever chaos awaited them. What had just shattered behind closed doors? And would the truth about the past finally catch up with them in that moment? Richard's heart raced as he stood just inside the threshold, the heavy silence crashing around him like a wave. He searched for the source of the crash, his mind conjuring dreadful scenarios. Had something terrible happened? Emily gripped his arm, looking to him for direction. The air felt charged, almost electric with anticipation. "Dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "we need to check it out." He nodded, forcing himself to move forward despite the weight pressing down on his chest. The house, once filled with laughter and life, was eerily quiet now. Shadows loomed in every corner, blending into the worry etched on Emily's face. As he stepped deeper into the living room, he noticed the remains of a shattered vase on the floor, floral fragments scattered like memories lying abandoned. His gaze flickered to the kitchen, where the back door swung open, creaking against its frame. Was someone there? Confusion and fear sparked in his gut. "Stay right behind me," Richard said, taking the lead. His instincts screamed that something was off. Emily nodded, but her expression betrayed the swirling emotions within: fear, distrust, and a glimmer of defiance. Each creaking floorboard beneath them echoed, amplifying the eerie stillness around them. Richard's heart pounded in rhythm with his footsteps, slow and measured. He moved toward the kitchen and paused at the doorway, peering into the shadows. The kitchen was dimly lit, the scattered light from outside barely breaking through. A strange chill settled over him. He stepped inside, and the sight of a figure revealed itself. An uninvited guest loomed near the open door. "Who's there?" he called out, forcing his voice to remain steady. The figure turned, and Richard's breath hitched. It was Lisa, his estranged sister, looking as disheveled as he'd ever seen her. Panic washed over her features as her eyes darted from Richard to Emily. She was clutching something behind her back, her demeanor suggesting she'd been rummaging through things she had no right to. "What are you doing here?" Richard demanded, feeling the anger rising within him. I came to get some things," Lisa stammered, glancing at the broken vase. "I didn't mean to. I wasn't. You weren't supposed to be here," Richard thundered, frustration spilling over as confusion began to morph into anger. "Not after everything that happened. Not after how you left us." "I know," she shot back, her voice trembling. "But I had no choice. I was trying to find something important." Emily stepped forward, a mix of courage and fear flickering across her face. "What's so important? Is it about Mom?" At the mention of their mother, a shadow crossed Lisa's face, her expression morphing into something unreadable. "You have to understand," she said, voice rising, "it's more complicated than you think." The tension filled the air like thick fog, each word escalating the stakes. Richard exchanged a worried glance with Emily. Should they push for answers? Was this moment perhaps linked to the letter and the key? Complicated? Like Mom's gambling? Richard accused, his voice dropping to a grim whisper. "What kind of trouble were you involved in?" "I didn't come to fight," she replied, her voice fragile. "I came to warn you. Or to help." The sincerity in her voice caught him off guard. A knot twisted in his stomach. What had Lisa gotten herself into? Before he could respond, he felt the weight of the letter in his pocket, an invitation to a truth buried in shadow. Could it all somehow fit together? "If you have something to say it," Emily urged, her impatience sparking in the tense atmosphere. Lisa's eyes darted back toward the open door. "I think you both need to see what's at that deposit box before it's too late." Richard's stomach dropped. He didn't want to take the next step, but the gravity of Lisa's words was undeniable. What had begun as a day of festivity was spiraling into a nightmare, and every moment brought them closer to a truth they couldn't ignore. The truth dangled ahead, tantalizing yet terrifying, and the choice lay before them. Would they dive deeper into a family history riddled with secrets? As they exchanged unsure glances, the air thick with uncertainty, a voice from outside called, "Richard." "Emily." Are you in there? A new element of dread seeped through the walls of their small bubble, raising the question who else was on this journey? And what if this time the secrets weren't the only thing threatening to expose them? Richard felt the ground slip beneath him. The sudden voice from outside shattered the tense moment, forcing a new reality crashing in around them. He and Emily turned towards the door instinctively, tension sharp as knives. Who is that? Emily whispered, as if saying it too loudly would make their unknown visitor vanish into thin air. Stay here, Richard said, though the words felt hollow. Racing thoughts surged in his mind. They couldn't afford distractions, not when Lisa was standing in the middle of something he couldn't yet comprehend. He turned back to his sister, who was shifting anxiously, the secret she held behind her back still hidden from view. What are you talking about, Lisa? What's at the deposit box? I can't explain everything now, she pleaded. But we need to get there before someone else does. It's not safe here. No one is safe anywhere, Richard snapped, frustration creeping into his voice. You show up after years talking about things we don't understand, and you expect us to just follow you? I'm begging you, she said, her eyes darting wildly. You don't know what's at stake. If they find it first, who? Richard interrupted, but before Lisa could respond, another call echoed from outside, sharper this time. Richard. Emily. Open up. This voice was familiar, threaded with urgency. It sent icy chills creeping down Richard's spine. Suddenly he recognized it. Joe, an old family friend. A steady presence after the spiraling chaos that Lisa left behind all those years ago. But why was he here now? Was he a threat? Or a potential ally against whatever was coming? Damn it, he growled, shaking his head. Why now? Behind him, Emily stepped forward, her fingers twisting anxiously around the hem of her shirt. Dad, maybe we should let him in. He might have answers. And what if he's part of whatever mess Lisa is trying to pull us into? Richard countered, his heart pounding louder than ever. I'm not a threat, Lisa exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch. Joe is the reason I came back. If he's here, it's worse than you think. Richard's mind was spinning. The weight of decisions pressed down like a heavy fog. Every second felt like a countdown. The walls of the house spiraling tighter around him. What do you mean by that? He demanded, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. But Lisa was looking past him, her face paling as the door creaked open a fraction. You need to hurry. We don't have time. In that moment, Richard felt the pull of danger tightening around them. Emily, what do you think? I think we need to face this head-on, she said, her voice steadier than he expected. Let Joe in. We can't run from this. All right, Richard huffed with resignation, the truth looming like a storm cloud above them. As he opened the door wide, Joe's expression revealed shock, assessing the chaos inside. So I take it things are worse than we thought, Joe said, eyeing Lisa with suspicion. Yeah, Richard replied, the shadows swallowing his next words. And we need answers fast. But before he could ask the right questions, the door swung shut behind Joe, sealing their fates. Do you trust me? Lisa asked suddenly, desperation curling in her voice. Richard hesitated, then fixed her with a hard stare, feeling the push of obligation and fear. I don't know if I can. A silence blanketed them, and the air felt lighter but more volatile. In that moment, he knew they were teetering on the edge of a dark revelation. They were deep in it now as Joe stepped closer, the tension palpable. A sudden crash outside sent them all jumping. What the hell was that? Richard shouted, heart racing anew at the thought of an intrusion beyond their control. Stay inside, Joe barked, jutting his chin toward the window. We need to see what we're dealing with. Richard could feel it, a shifting tide. The secrets were pulling him deeper, and the truth was just out of reach. What awaited them outside? And could they really trust Lisa in a situation spiraling out of control? The question loomed heavily, the house now feeling more like a trap than a home. The night was just beginning, and he knew the greatest danger was yet to come. Richard's heart hammered against his ribcage as he moved instinctively toward the window, every muscle taut with anxiety. The darkness outside swallowed the yard, but shadows flickered like restless spirits. What was that? He whispered, straining to see. Something's moving out there, Lisa muttered, her hands clasped tightly together. Her vulnerability made Richard want to protect her, Yet there was a nagging doubt coiling in his gut like a snake preparing to strike. "Everyone stay low," Joe ordered, nearly whispering as he crouched beside Richard. The man's eyes darted around, memories of the past colliding with the present chaos. How many times had they shared a laugh, only for laughter to dissolve into something darker? "We don't know what we're dealing with." The crash reverberated again, this time louder. An unmistakable sound of metal against wood. Richard's breath hitched. "It's south too close," he croaked. "What the hell is happening?" "There were warnings," Joe said, his voice steady but urgent. "I came to find you after I heard rumors about people looking for something. Something dangerous." "Dangerous?" Emily repeated, fear flashing across her face. "Let us not get ahead of ourselves," Richard replied, trying to mask his own panic. "What do you know, Joe? Is it about Lisa?" "It's bigger than that," Joe insisted. His eyes locked on Lisa, who almost seemed to wilt under the weight of his gaze. "Those who want the deposit box will stop at nothing." Richard felt a chill skitter down his spine. "Why didn't you tell us before?" "I didn't know. I just found out," Lisa snapped, desperation rising like bile in her throat. "Someone was watching me. They know I came back. They know I'm with you." A sudden crash made the walls tremble. This time, Richard could see movement outside, two dark figures prowling near the edge of the property. "Who are they?" he muttered, his mind racing. "I don't know. But they won't let us go without it," Lisa replied, a raw tremor in her voice. Joe shifted closer, grabbing Richard by the arm. "We need to act. If they realize we're inside," he left the thought dangling ominously. Richard felt a weight settle in the room, the air thickening with an unspoken fear. "Should we grab something to defend ourselves?" Emily suggested, her voice trembling as much as her hands. "We might not have time," Joe warned, glancing again at the window. "We have to." Suddenly, the door rattled violently, a thud echoing through the silence like a thunderclap. Joe shot a quick look to Richard, who returned it, fear mirrored in his eyes. "Here they come," Joe shouted, adrenaline surging through him. "Hide," Richard commanded, ushering Emily and Lisa toward the back of the house. He felt his heart pounding, sweat forming on his brow as they ducked behind the kitchen island. The world around them seemed to shrink, every second stretching painfully. "Do you see them?" Emily whispered, her breath shallow. Richard strained his ears, listening intently. Footsteps crackled on the porch, voices drifting in low and menacing. Anxiety gripped him. "We can't let them in." But then something unexpected happened, hushed voices and a slamming sound just beyond the door, followed by a frantic whisper, tinged with panic. "Let us in." A voice called. "Please. They're coming." "Is that?" Richard squinted, trying to look through a crack. A rush of confusion flooded him. Who was outside? Friend? Foe? Richard. The voice, familiar yet distorted by desperation. He couldn't place it, but instinct itched in his chest. "Who is it?" he croaked, every nerve alight with tension. Joe's grip on his arm tightened, a warning without words. "Open the door. We need help." The voice pleaded again, and Richard felt his heart drop. The urgency was palpable, yet he couldn't shake the feeling of manipulation. Were they in danger already, or just beginning to scratch at the surface of a much larger nightmare? He hesitated, the weight of choices looming as he clenched his fists. "Let me think," he hissed, casting glances at his family huddled behind him, and the darkness beyond them. Someone was lying. But the question remained, who? And would choosing wrong seal their fate? The door rattled again, urgent and panicked, and Richard felt the icy grip of dread. Whose side was he really on? The night was far from over, and answers still danced just out of reach. The pounding on the door became more frantic, drowning out Richard's thoughts. It felt like a heartbeat, their heartbeat, racing against an unseen terror. He could almost hear the desperate breaths of the person outside, begging for refuge. "Richard, please." The voice grew louder, more insistent. "It's me. It's Mark. I don't have much time." Mark. A flicker of recognition flashed across Richard's mind, but it was buried underneath layers of fear and suspicion. "What has happened? Why are you out there?" "Just let me in," Mark pleaded, and Richard could sense the panic rising even from behind the door. "They're coming for me. I've got information, important information." "Do you trust him?" Lisa whispered, clutching Richard's arm, urgency reflected in her wide eyes. I don't know. He hissed back, battling the internal storm of doubt and loyalty. Joe took a deep breath, peering through the kitchen window at the figures still lingering outside. We can't stay here, he said, voice low but powerful. If they realize we're not alone. Another pounding made the house shudder. Richard's gut twisted. Mark was a childhood friend. Someone he once trusted implicitly. But now? What if this is a trap? Word travels fast, you know that, Joe grunted, refusing to look away from the window. He wouldn't come if he wasn't scared. They must have found him. What do we do? Richard felt like a marionette, strings tangled. Fear pressed on him like a vice, squeezing out rational thoughts. If we open that door. Before he could finish, Emily's trembling voice cut through the noise. What if he's right? What if we need that information? Richard's heart ached. The risk they were taking was colossal. Either they opened up to potential salvation or sealed their doom. The door rattled again, more vehement this time, and he could feel the weight of the decision crushing him. Richard. Mark's voice cracked, raw and frantic. I swear I'm on your side. Can we trust him? Lisa's fear was palpable, spreading through the room like poison. Maybe it's time to find out, Joe said, resolute. He glanced at Richard, determination hardening the lines of his face. We can't wait any longer. The urgency swelled in the air, and Richard's hands shook. He shot another look at Emily and Lisa, reading their expressions, barely masking their dread. What they needed was clarity and strength, not this haze of uncertainty. Okay, he finally said, voice steady yet heavy with the weight of consequence. On 3 we open the door. But if anything seems off, we slam it shut. Lisa nodded, biting her lip while Emily clutched at her side. Joe stood close, almost a sentinel, ready to spring into action. 1, 2 as Richard counted. A chill crept down his spine. He felt like he was walking a tightrope over a dark abyss, every heartbeat echoing along its wavering line. 3. Richard reached for the handle, adrenaline surging through him. He twisted it, pulling the door open with a swift motion, heart in his throat. The dim light of the porch lamp revealed Mark, his face shadowed, panic-stricken. Get in! Joe yelled, and as Mark stumbled forward breathless, all 5 of them collided in a chaotic rush. The outside world pressed in, jagged and heavy. Richard spun, slamming the door against the unknown. Are they here? Did they follow you? Joe demanded, eyes darting to every shadow. Mark shook his head, but the fear in his eyes told another story. Not yet, but they will be. Richard's heart dropped again like a stone. What do you mean? Who are they? They're not just after the box, it's bigger. Mark panted, desperation pouring from him like sweat. They won't stop until they find all of us. As Richard processed the weight of this revelation, the lights flickered ominously overhead. Faint sounds echoed from outside, whispering of danger looming closer. Stay quiet, Richard whispered. We need to figure out our next move. Before he could finish, a shadow moved past the window, dark and foreboding, making his blood run cold. What was that? Lisa whispered, fear shaking her voice. Richard held his breath as he stared into the gloom outside. Everything had spiraled into chaos. A single word echoed ominously inside his mind, why? But before he could ask himself any further, the door quaked again, rattling beneath the weight of unseen threats. It felt like the night itself was closing in. What had they just invited into their lives? And how far were they willing to go to uncover the truth? The answers loomed, darker than the shadows that surrounded them. The room felt suffocating. Richard's heart thundered in his chest, and the air was thick with tension. He glanced at Mark, whose ashen face told him everything he needed to know. Time was running out. Each flicker of the faulty light overhead seemed to cast an unsettling aura over them, making the shadows stretch longer, more menacing. What do we do now? Lisa's voice quivered. She peered over at Richard, her face pale and wide-eyed. The fear etched on her features curled around him like tendrils, tightening with every frantic pulse. Mark took a step closer, lowering his voice. We can't stay in one place for long. They've got eyes everywhere. And if they think we're here, Joe clenched his fists, staring daggers at the door, as if it were the enemy itself. We need a plan. We can't just run blindly into the night. Then what? Richard snapped, the weight of responsibility lacerating his resolve. We sit here and wait for them to burst through? Or worse, forget about the box because of our indecision? Mark's gaze flickered to the window. They want to just be looking for me. They want the box back. Whoever or whatever is behind this isn't going to stop until they retrieve it. And we don't even know what's inside it. Emily stepped back, shaking her head, eyes filling with tears. This wasn't supposed to happen. We were just getting on with our lives. Look, Richard interjected, fighting the growing sense of hopelessness. First things first, we need to figure out what that box means. Mark, what do you know? Mark inhaled deeply, his breath shaking. It's not just money. There are things in there that can change everything: identities, proof of crimes, the kind of power that changes who people are. Great, Joe said, bitterness creeping into his tone. So we're sitting on a treasure chest everyone wants. Lovely. Suddenly a loud crash echoed from outside, followed by a string of muffled shouts. Every head turned towards the sound, terror mounting. A bead of cold sweat trickled down Richard's back, and Lisa grabbed his arm tightly. Get down, Joe commanded, instinctively pushing them all away from the windows. The pounding resumed, but this time it was splintering, heavy, urgent. Mark's eyes were locked in fear. They're here. We have to go now. Before they could process his words, the door rattled violently, wood creaking under the pressure. Richard felt a surge of adrenaline, every nerve in his body screaming for action. To the back. He shouted. We can't go out the front. Mark nodded, urgency gripping him. They rushed toward the back door. But as they sprinted through the narrow hallway, Richard stole a glance back at the door just as a shadow crossed the threshold. Now! He yelled, and they barreled through the kitchen into the dim backyard, the darkness swallowing them whole. They froze, hearts pounding as they scanned the shadows, looking for any sign of pursuers. Richard felt the weight of the night pressing in on him. He held his breath, listening, each quiet rustle amplified in the dead air. Where do we go? Paul whispered, scanning the wooded edge of the property. There. Mark pointed toward a narrow footpath leading into the thicket of trees. If we can get deep enough, they might lose our trail. Let us move, Richard urged, and they descended into the shadows, the branches clawing at them as they rushed ahead. With every step, fear clawed at Richard's insides, gnawing at the edges of his resolve. He couldn't shake the dread that followed them, that lurking presence whispering that they were in over their heads. He stumbled on a root, cursed under his breath, and pressed on. The path twisted beneath their feet, branches reaching like skeletal fingers trying to pull them back. They stopped for a moment, breathless. What's the plan if we can't shake them? Lisa asked, eyes wide with panic. Mark opened his mouth to speak, but Richard interrupted, a new thought forming. What if we use the box against them? What do you mean? Joe asked, brow furrowing. Richard could feel his heart racing anew, a plan beginning to take shape in his mind. But before he could articulate it, a flash of movement in the tree line made them freeze. Did you see that? Emily whispered, and just as she spoke, a piercing scream shattered the night. Richard's stomach lurched. They had all just entered into something far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. What were they really up against? And who had sent them hurtling down this dangerous road? The scream faded into an eerie silence that gripped the air like a vice. Richard stood frozen, every muscle coiled with tension. The darkness seemed alive, pulsating with fear, and he felt a chill run down his spine. Behind him, Lisa clutched his arm tighter, her nails digging into his skin, an anchor in this storm of uncertainty. Did you hear that? We need to move. Joe panicked, scanning the dim trees for any movement. Mark nodded, his eyes darting back toward the direction of the scream. That was close. We can't stick around to figure out what's happening. If they're hunting us down, we need to put as much distance as we can between us and here. Richard took a deep breath, fighting against the panic rising inside him. Okay, let us go deeper into the woods, away from the scream, he whispered. He led the group down the narrow path, their feet padding softly on the loamy earth. Each step was laced with urgency, but Richard's mind raced with thoughts of the box. What's in that box? Emily whispered, shivering as the chill of the night settled over them. Why would anyone want it so badly? Richard hesitated, glancing back at Mark. Whatever it is, it must be worth a lot, enough for people to risk their lives for it. But we need a plan. If we can find out what's really in there, we might be able to turn the tables. Mark rubbed the back of his neck, his face drawn tight with worry. Could be dangerous. The wrong hands could use whatever's in there to ruin lives. That's a risk we might have to take, Richard argued, his voice steadying. If we know what we're dealing with, maybe we can leverage it somehow. Suddenly, a loud snap echoed from behind, sending them all into a frantic halt. The group huddled together, hearts pounding like drums in the night. Richard's body tensed, adrenaline flooding his system. He felt alive and terrified. What was that? Lisa whispered, her voice trembling. Just keep moving, Joe urged, eyes wide as he tried to peer through the darkness behind them. Stay close. They pressed forward, but the air was thick with dread. Richard stole glances over his shoulder, half expecting to see looming figures emerging from the shadows. Every rustle felt like a whisper from the unknown, threatening to unravel their fragile hope. As they pushed deeper into the woods, Richard stumbled upon an old clearing lit by the silvery glow of the moon. An abandoned shack loomed ahead. It looked weathered and forgotten, but it could provide some shelter, perhaps even a place to regroup and come up with a solid plan. Over there, Richard pointed, his heart beating faster. Maybe we can hide inside for a bit. He led them toward the shack, using his shoulder to push the creaking door open. The smell of damp would hit them like a wave. Inside, shadows danced in the faint light as they made their way in. Is it safe? Emily asked, her eyes wide as she took in the derelict surroundings. It's better than being out there, Richard replied. We just need to figure out our next move. They crowded into the small space, the air heavy with tension. But before anyone could speak, the sound of feet crunching on leaves made them freeze. Every set of eyes locked on the door, holding breath, waiting. Then, a low voice broke the silence, echoing from just outside the shack, sending chills racing down Richard's spine. I know you're in there. Richard's heart dropped. Who was chasing them now? Why were they hunting the box? The urgency sharpened, every second ticking away. He turned to the others, determination igniting in his chest. Whatever happens, we have to be ready to fight back. We can't let them take the box or us. But even as Richard spoke, doubt clawed at him. What if they were overmatched? The truth was more sinister, lurking in the shadows. Outside, the voice called again, sharper now. There's no escaping. You can't hide from the truth. Richard swallowed hard. They were right on the edge, and the next moment could change everything. What other secrets lay in wait, and were they truly prepared to face the darkness closing in? The silence hung in the air, thick with anxiety. The voice outside felt like a noose tightening around their throats. Richard's heart raced. Every instinct told him they were out of time. We can't let them in, he murmured, glancing at his sister, Emily, and Mark, who both wore faces taut with fear. The flickering shadows danced ominously on the walls, mirroring their rising dread. Let me take a look, Joe whispered, inching toward the small window, casting quick glances outside. Sweat trickled down Richard's brow. Every nerve ending screamed at him to act. Joe, wait, he hissed. But Joe was already crouched low, peeking through the wooden slats. Richard's own heart drummed a warning, urgent and wild. Who are you? Joe demanded, voice low yet firm. What do you want? I know you're hiding, the voice called again, colder than a winter's chill. You can't hide from the ashes of the past. Richard felt a chill grip his spine. It sounded familiar, like a haunting echo of memories he wished he could forget. His mind raced, grappling to recall where he had heard it before. Who is it? Emily whispered, gripping Richard's arm. Someone who knows, Mark replied softly, realization sinking in. What we're dealing with is deeper than we thought. It's them, whoever's after the box. Lisa deduced, voice quavering yet resolute. They're trying to intimidate us. Intimidate? Richard gritted his teeth. I won't let them scare us into submission. He turned to the others, his resolve hardening. We either confront this head-on or run, but hiding here? That's not an option. What if opening the door is the wrong choice? Emily's voice trembled, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. With a surge of conviction, Richard stepped forward, heart pounding. We need to know who's out there. There's no turning back now. He took a deep breath, ready to face whatever awaited them. On three, he said, glancing around at his family and friends, gathering their courage like a flame in the dark. 1, 2, 3. They moved together, Richard swinging the door open with force. The moonlight spilled into the shack, illuminating a figure cloaked in shadows, a tall silhouette with familiar features. Richard. The voice cracked, a touch of urgency threading through. Mark exhaled, recognition flooding his face. Mark. The realization hit as they all stepped out into the night, the air heavy with unspoken fears. Their old friend stood there, worn and weathered, passion reflecting in his tired eyes. You need to trust me. They're close. Behind him, Richard caught glimpses of movement, shadows shifting in the dark underbrush. The urgency of the moment throbbed at his temples. What do you mean? Who is they? Mark glanced back nervously, then took a steadying breath. I was digging deeper into the past, asking questions. Some people are very interested in that box. They think it holds more than just money. More? Lisa whispered, her voice trembling. Like what? Names, deals, associations with dangerous people. Mark's voice lowered, intensity flooding his words. That box contains evidence of crimes, evidence that could unravel powerful entities. Richard's pulse quickened like a racing train. When you say powerful, what do you mean? Think beyond just gambling debts, Richard. This goes into something much darker, real threats. People who wouldn't hesitate to eliminate anyone who stands in their way, including us. As Mark spoke, the night felt alive, vibrating with tension and danger. The shadows danced closer, a palpable dread coiling around them. Richard felt a knot tighten in his stomach, a mix of fear and determination surfacing. So what do we do? First, we need to get to that box, Mark urged. But to do that, we'll need a plan to evade whoever is tracking us. A chill ran through Richard's veins as he considered the implications. What if they've already found it? There's a chance, Mark said, a frown creasing his brow. But if we act quickly, we might still be ahead of them. Gather what you can. No, Richard interrupted, the urgency bubbling within him. We don't gather. We go now. He turned to the others, heart racing. It's time to reclaim what's ours before it falls into the wrong hands. They all nodded, fear morphing into a steely resolve. They stepped back into the woods, urgency igniting their pace while Mark led the way. It felt surreal, like stepping into a nightmare, yet it was their reality. The oppressive weight of night surrounded them, broken only by the sound of their hurried breaths and rustling leaves. They were pushing deeper into enemy territory, and every sound felt magnified as they weaved through the trees. Richard couldn't shake the feeling that danger was hot on their heels. The secrets had unleashed something monstrous, and they had to face it. Minutes felt like hours until the unseen shadows finally engulfed their path, smothering them in silence. Richard looked at each of them, and the bond of shared fear united them. We find that box no matter the risk. Together. Together, Emily echoed, strengthened by her father's words as they pressed forward into the unknown. Faced with terror that loomed in the darkness, one single truth resonated within Richard's heart. The greatest battles were just beginning. With purpose burned in their veins, they forged ahead, embracing a fate that could finally break the chains of their past. Each step was a promise to unearth the truth, and to finally take back their lives. And so they moved deeper into the night. The box awaited, the past called, and the future hung in precarious balance. This is your moment. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss any of the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Your support means the world. Flood the comments below with your reactions and theories about the ending. Let's get this conversation going. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Every click counts, and only true fans understand the importance of being part of this journey.